Today I am with you with a new topic, that is Pigouvian welfare economics. This topic you have to read in microeconomic analysis second, and in that paper you have to go through different aspects of welfare economics. As you know, welfare is not new, or the term welfare is oftenly used in the subject of economics. If we go very early in the period of definition, we can say that the second important definition after Adam Smith, that was given by Professor Marshall in his book Principles of Economics, is based upon welfare criteria, and that's why that is also known as welfare definition of economics. As I have said, that the concept of welfare was discussed quite early by the utilitarian economist Jeremy Bentham and Marshall and so on. But a systematic study of welfare economics was started by Professor A.C. Pigou. So, credit of systematizing the study of welfare economics belongs to Professor A.C. Pigou, and in that context he has written two books, that is Wealth and Welfare in 1912 and Economics of Welfare 1932. And this discussion was a systematic one that was focused totally on the discussion of welfare, and that's why it is also known as Pigouvian welfare economics. As we know that Pigou was one of the pillars of neoclassical economics. So, the Pigouvian welfare economics is also called neoclassical welfare economics. It relates, the neoclassical economics relates itself with Pigou, Marshall, Hicks. So, for above said reason, since Pigou focused himself over welfare and economics of welfare, that's why he is also known as father of welfare economics. Let us discuss first meaning of welfare. As you know that welfare is very much associated with utility, and that's why in my early expression I have said that the study of welfare or welfare economics starts with utilitarian economics itself. But as far as the dictionary meaning of welfare is concerned, it is satisfactory state, health, prosperity, well-being, usually of persons or society. So, here welfare is very much associated with utility attained, and for that utility there needs the commodity, goods or services desired for fulfillment of that utility. According to A.C. Pigou, welfare is a thing of very wide range. So, the area of welfare is very broad one, but Pigou laid down two propositions in this context when he was defining welfare. He laid down two propositions. Firstly, that elements of welfare are states of consciousness. It means that the welfare is very much associated with the mind and consciousness, what we think or what the mind thought about the utility attained, or the health or prosperity or well-being attained through the use of goods and services. So, the elements of welfare are states of consciousness and perhaps their relations. Secondly, that welfare can be brought under the category of greater or loss. So, first point that was focused by A.C. Pigou, that welfare and its very much relation with the consciousness or the frame of mind or the thinking of mind, and the interrelation between the thinking about the utility or prosperity or well-being attained. And second point, that welfare can be brought under the category of greater or loss. It means how much welfare we are going to attain or we are attaining, or how much welfare attained can be compared, can be analyzed, that this part is providing greater welfare, that part providing lesser welfare, and that's on. Next point, that is individual welfare consists in the utility or satisfaction derived from the possession of economic and goods and services. I have already said that welfare is associated with utility attained, and utility is the satisfaction attained after the using goods and services. So, the abstract idea about welfare is related with utility, and utility is defined as the satisfaction attained with the use of goods and services that in the possession of an individual or a society. Second, next point, that is concept of net economic welfare of the individual would therefore amount to the consumer's surplus enjoyed by him. As here the concept is what is economic welfare and what is net economic welfare. Here Pigou takes the criteria of consumer surplus from Marshall itself to define the net aspect of economic welfare, and that's why he say that the concept of net economic welfare of the individual would amount to the consumer's surplus enjoyed by him. So, the money or the expenditure that consumer is prepared to pay apart from the value of the commodity, that part is related with consumer surplus. So, consumer surplus is useful in deciding the concept of net economic welfare. Next point, that is economics being concerned with social or group welfare, be thought of as the summation of individual welfare or satisfaction. We know that economics is not the study of an individual itself, but it is related, it consists of the idea about the group or the whole society. So, the total welfare or the economic welfare attained by a society of group can be summarized or can be defined as the summation of individual welfares or satisfaction. As welfare is a function of goods and services, changes in the quality and quantity of goods and services, as also their distribution among individuals of the society, will affect the welfare of the society and through him aggregate social welfare. Here, I have repeatedly said that welfare is a function of goods and services possessed by the individual or the society that was used by the individual or society. So, the root cause starts from the use of goods and services, and availability of goods and services very much defines the welfare attained by the individual, or summation of that individual satisfaction or welfare becomes the total economic welfare attained by the society. And this total or aggregate social welfare can be managed, can be changed or rearranged or maximized by distribution of the commodity, goods and services in the possession, because goods and services and the utility and that generates to welfare is very much associated with consciousness of the mind. So, distribution among the individual groups or change in the distribution among different individuals may lead to change in the total economic welfare. Pigou Pigou has systematized the study of welfare, and that's why credit goes to him to be adjudged as the father of welfare economics. But he don't stop there itself. In that context, since welfare is a broader criteria, so Pigou wanted to limit the subject matter to more manageable and measurable categories. Since the idea of welfare is very vast, and that's why its measurement and management is quite difficult. That's why Pigou followed a definite pattern to study the economic welfare. The one obvious instrument of measurement available in social life is money. The challenge before Pigou was to how to measure such a concept, welfare, and the one important measurement available, that is money. Here the range of our inquiry becomes restricted to that part of social welfare that can be brought directly or indirectly into relation with the measuring rod of money. Here the term measuring rod of money, since welfare can be attained through various ways, or it may be possible that cannot be measured through a significant measurement or the unit of measurement, that is money. So he divides welfare into two parts: economic welfare and non-economic welfare. The economic welfare consists of the welfare or that is or that can be measured through money. So if any welfare that comes under the periphery of the measurement of money, or that is possible to follow the test of measuring rod of money, that part of a part of welfare is called economic welfare. But a precise boundary between economic and non-economic welfare does not exist. Of course, this division of economic welfare and non-economic welfare, or more exactly said general welfare, is only to make the study easy one, or analyze the welfare criteria in much easier way. Otherwise, it lead to a complex jargon and becomes impossible to discuss or analyze the welfare situation all about. So, a precise boundary can't be erected in between economic welfare and non-economic welfare or general welfare. The test of accessibility to a money measure serves well enough to set up a rough distinction between economic and non-economic welfare. So, the only distinction between economic and non-economic welfare lies in the measurement, and that measurement which is possible through money, and that is also a very rough distinction in between economic welfare or general welfare. The changes economic and non-economic welfare act and react upon each other and have its impact on total welfare. It is very important that economic welfare affects non-economic part of welfare and vice versa, and in totality all have its impact upon the total welfare. Lastly, there is the presumption by the ACPGU that qualitative conclusions about effects upon economic welfare will hold good also of effects upon total welfare. PIGU considers economic welfare and national dividend, that is national income, necessarily as coordinates. So, here PIGU as defining economic welfare uses the term measuring rod of money, or the welfare that can be tested or that can be measured with a measuring rod of money comes or considered as economic welfare, and that welfare is very much associated with national income, because total aggregation of output is called national dividend or national income. So, the consideration of economic welfare and national dividend as coordinate refers all about the interlinkages between welfare and national income in the discussion of measurement of welfare by PIGU. As economic welfare is a function of goods and services at the national level, it can be said that for the most part, economic causes act upon economic welfare, not directly but through the national dividend. As national income is decided by the economic activities causes through the use of goods and services and the produce thereafter that. So, national income decides the total economic welfare. Through the technique of index number, the total production of goods and services is converted into national income, and changes therein are said to represent changes in economic welfare as well. So, if we have to measure the situation of economic welfare that is attained by the society or a country or a group is decided by the income attained by the individual, the society, or in case of a country, the total national dividend decide the welfare situation or the availability of total economic welfare that persists that very time. Here we find that starting from utility, satisfaction, consciousness, then after measurement through the measuring rod of money, economic criteria of welfare, and its coordination with the national dividend. So, how PIGU decides about the welfare? For this, PIGU laid down some conditions, and that conditions are based upon dual criteria prescribed by him. Pigou fixes dual criteria for maximization of welfare. Firstly, provided that the dividend accruing to the poor is not diminished, increases in the aggregate national dividend of the community unless they result from coercing people to work more than they wish to do, carry with them increase in economic welfare. Here, Pigou said that if there is increase in total national dividend without laying the poor in worse of situation or forcing them for work without their will, any increase in national dividend will lead to increase in economic welfare. Secondly, not only increase but the distribution part is also important. So, secondly, changes in the distribution of the national dividend in favor of the poor, provided that it has no adverse impact on enterprise and development effort. Here, Pigou gone through the criteria of utility attainment or marginalist theory. As we know, the marginal utility attained by the same amount of money is higher in case of a poor one than that of a rich person. So, any distribution in national dividend that go in favor of the poor will lead to enhancement in welfare of the poor, and that's why increase in total welfare, because certain minimum transfer from the rich to poor will not lessen the economic welfare attained by the rich people. But one point must be noted here, that any redistribution of income, if affects negatively the enterprise or investment or developmental efforts due to reallocation of national income in favor of poor, that is not necessarily lead to enhancement of total economic welfare. What I am going to say here, that redistribution without listening or without reducing the developmental effort, enterprise capability or capacity to invest, if goes in favor of poor, that will enhance their individual welfare, and that's why there will be increase in total welfare of the society or the country. The above said conditions, said dual conditions that are prescribed by Pigou is based upon two hypotheses of Pigou, that are: first, equal capacity for satisfaction. Here Pigou assumes or hypothesizes that equal amount of money or good provides or capable enough to provide the same amount of satisfaction. And second, that the law of diminishing marginal utility of income applies. If this dual hypothesis is maintained, the above said condition will lead to maximization or enhancement in welfare or economic welfare, as said by Pigou. Pigouian welfare conditions and dual criteria, as discussed just now, are based upon the assumptions, and that assumptions are just like any classical economist's assumptions regarding his study. The assumptions or Pigouvian assumptions are just like the classical assumptions, or those assumptions are: first, Pigou believes or Pigou thinks that cardinal measurement of utility is possible. However, early part of his study, where he thinks about the idea or consciousness or the abstract nature of utility and the problem involved in its measurement. But later on in his study, he thinks that cardinal measurement of utility in terms of util that can later on measured by money is possible. Next assumption, that each individual tries to maximize his satisfaction from his expenditure on different goods and services. Pigou thinks or Pigou believes that each individual tries to maximize his satisfaction. That is his intricate nature. So, he always thinks about maximizing his satisfaction through expenditure on goods and services. In other words, treating all individuals alike from the point of view of derivation of utility from money. So, to maximize the welfare very much relates with satisfaction attainment, and that is treating all individuals alike from the point of view of derivation of utility from money. It means each individual try to maximize his satisfaction or welfare through maximum attainment by using or expending his money or income. Next assumption that is taken by Pigou, that interpersonal and intrapersonal comparison of utility is possible. He thinks that same amount of money gives how much satisfaction to A and how much satisfaction to B can be compared, and not this, apart from the money that expended on different goods by a individual consumer to attain satisfaction, how much satisfaction he attains from one good or another good also comparable. Next point, that is equal capacity for satisfaction. Next assumption, that is universal applicability of diminishing marginal utility from money. So, marginalist theory or diminishing marginal utility comes into operation when Pigou goes for deciding the welfare condition based upon his dual criteria. And last but not the least, any classical assumption, Pigou thoughts or assumes that there is perfect competition, always there is the situation of perfect competition and full employment in the economy, or having all these assumptions fulfilled, Pigou fixes certain conditions and uses his dual criteria for maximization or enhancement or measurement of economic or general welfare. Criticism of Pigouvian welfare economics is based upon the assumptions taken by Pigou itself, as Pigou assumes that cardinal measurement and interpersonal comparison is not proper. Pigou takes the idea of cardinal measurement of utility or interpersonal comparison is possible. Critics say that both these 2 points are not proper to decide to decides the condition of welfare, because it is better to compare the utility by the ordinalist measurement. After the arrival of ordinalist measurement, cardinal measurement of utility is a flaw criteria. So, since Pigouvian assumption is based upon cardinal measurement of utility and interpersonal comparison, these two assumptions are not appropriate. That is a basic criticism of Pigouvian welfare economics. If Pigouvian maximum is optimum, Pigou always uses maximization of welfare, and here it looks like the optimum. Here Pigouvian maximum is nothing but optimum, but here maximum decided by Pigou is a stable point, but optimum never be stable. It is a dynamic process. So this assumption is not very comfortable to go for further study of welfare economics. Next, national dividend is not the only measure of economic welfare. Apart from national dividend, other situations are there can enhance economic welfare, but in totality, total emphasis in the decision of welfare goes over national income according to Pigouvian welfare economics. This is one of the criticism of Pigouvian welfare economics. Lastly, it does not explain ethical relation and interpret the value judgment involved, so fails to mark as an objective study. The last criticism of Pigouvian welfare economics, that welfare economics is a normative economics, and ethics or ethical relation is very much involved in it. So interpretation of value judgment lies there, and since he does not go further regarding the study of value judgment, so Pigouvian study or Pigouvian welfare economics is not a objective study to discuss welfare economics. This is the criticism against Pigouvian welfare economics. Having all the criticism, there is the importance of Pigouvian economics still persists. Under the impact of transient criticism of Lionel Robbins, Hicks, and others, the Pigouvian welfare economics lost its scientific purity. Various criticism laid down against Pigouvian criteria, Pigouvian assumptions, and overall Pigouvian welfare economics. The toughest critics is Leon Robbins and Hicks. Its assumptions were challenged, and so its operational consequences as guide to welfare policy. Here, since assumptions were not sustainable, that's why its operational consequences will not prove itself a true guide to decide the welfare policy, as said by the critics. But it still persists, particularly in the fields of taxation, minimum wage policy, and social legislation. Having all criticism aside, today, even today, Pigouvian welfare study is very much useful in field of taxation, minimum wage decision or decision regarding minimum wage policy, and various social legislations that are best upon the Pigouvian welfare study or the criteria given by Pigou regarding economic welfare. So, we can say that like the Fisher quantity theory of money, it is very defective. As in case of quantity theory of money, the earliest theory that is given by Fisher is said defective, outdated, and so on, so on. But we can hardly do without it. Fisher is outdated, defective, but still going forward for any quantity theory, we having in our mind the study of Fisher. Same situation appears in further study of welfare economics by various economists, either neoclassical or new welfare economists. So, its relevance still exists for various economic decisions in field of taxation, minimum wage decision, and social legislation. However, it was rescued from this situation by new welfare economists like Calder and Hicks. So, refinement in the study of Pigou by new welfare economists, especially Professor Calder and Hicks, it came again on forefront, and that we discuss in my onward presentation, that how Pigou Pigou's study come in the study of Calder and Hicks and gets its relevance again proved. Here I have gone deep into details of Pigouvian welfare economics and what are its main points, how where its worthiness lies, and how it has lost its significance, and then again with the effort of new welfare economists, it getting its relevance again proved. Later on, we have to study Pareto optimality, value judgment, and other study by new welfare economists. I think we are here going to complete Pigouvian welfare economics, but in my later videos or lectures, I will try to take the next or rest part of welfare economics. Thank you.